Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jacob Rudner here alongside Noah Cameras and Ariel Putterman. Welcome to this week's episode of dTSPN. So this week has been a great week in sports. We had some good NASCAR, but more importantly, in my opinion, we had some great basketball. Anthony Davis and Damian Lillard, both of whom broke 50 points in their basketball games. Anthony Davis came out with a stellar 59 points and 20 rebounds, a massive double-double. And Damian Lillard had 51 points against none other than the infamous Golden State Warriors. Which actually brings me to my next subject, being the Golden State Warriors. They have been struggling a lot lately. They've had a turnover problem, and they recently lost to Damian Lillard and the Blazers. Lillard with the 51 points in that game. And they really struggled lately. They also had a huge turnover problem, which also led to a comeback potential in that Hawks game, even though they still didn't come out on top. What do you guys think?
I just think out of the All-Star break, they had too much rest, and they kind of got off of basketball thoughts, and they had fun on the All-Star break, which led them to not playing as well. Also, maybe they got a little cocky out of the All-Star break with everyone talking about them breaking the Bulls record. So maybe that got to their head, but I honestly just think it was the All-Star break.
And what do you think about maybe just being human?
I think that, of course, they're human. Yes, they've had that insane season. They've already reached 50 wins, fastest team to do that. But even if you win all of them, you can't win all of them. You're going to have to lose some games in order to win the whole thing. Because like John Wooden once said, you have to win a game to be even better, so you know what you did wrong. Yeah.
So, moving on, we do have a question from a fan this week. This one's regarding the Golden State Warriors. This one's from Ross Stripling of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Thank you so much, Ross. He wants to know, do we think that their small ball way of basketball is going to change the game forever for the teams to start modeling after? What do you guys think?
I think yes. I mean, you saw last year in the finals when they were playing a much bigger Cavs team. They kept Bogut on the bench, they kept Ezeli on the bench, and they went with Curry, Thompson, Barnes, Iguodala, and Green. And you might think that may not work, and maybe in college it would, but in the pros it did, because Draymond Green is the kind of player that can play 1 through 5. He can box out your center. He can play defense on your point guard, and he can do everything for the team. And he is the perfect player to have on that team.
Yep. So, I mean, these are all great points, but it is almost time for NFL free agency, and that moves us on to NFL free agency. That's going to start next week, and some big problems that could arise is who's going to win the franchise tags for teams. If for those of you who don't know, a franchise tag is basically the player that the team wants to keep around for a few more years to come, and they're going to make some big bucks doing it.
Yeah.
So some players that are out there on the market that are likely going to pull a franchise tag from their squads are Von Miller. Obviously, we all know who that is with the Denver Broncos. He pulled that Super Bowl MVP. He deserves nothing less than a major franchise tag and a huge contract. Also, with the Carolina Panthers, we have Josh Norman. He's had a huge year. He also could pull a franchise tag. What do you guys think?
I think it's definitely going to be for Miller and Norman. Another guy to think about is Muhammad Wilkerson. These are 3 big staples to defenses. Miller with the Broncos, Norman with the Panthers, and then Muhammad Wilkerson with the Jets. If you saw in Week 17 for the Jets, it was a must-win game for them. Muhammad Wilkerson went down with an injury, and they came out with a loss. And I just think he's a major part of their team. They need him back.
Yeah. And what do you think?
I think Von Miller, they're obviously going to keep him. Super Bowl MVP. He's showing that he can do literally everything: sacks, interceptions, fumbles. And then Josh Norman, he's I'd say one of the top shutdown cornerbacks in the league. And then by Wilkerson, he literally was their defensive line. He had 12 sacks last season, and I think that they definitely have to keep him.
So moving on to free agents who may not and probably will not pull their franchise tags. First and foremost, Matt Forte. Huge career that he's had with the Bears. They've said, and he's said, they will not be meeting ends again for another contract. Matt Forte, for the first time in a long time, will be hitting the free agency market. And now we're looking to the NFL. Who's going to need him? Where might he land?
I think it's going to be the New England Patriots. I mean, he is the perfect running back for Tom Brady. Tom Brady's always used running backs that can catch out of the backfield. Last year was Deion Lewis, but he went down with an injury, and he was also a lot less experienced. Matt Forte, he catches out of the backfield, but he's very, very experienced. He's a veteran, and it'll be a perfect fit for the Patriots.
What do you think?
I agree. He's Bill Belichick's ideal running back. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. And when he catches the ball, you're going to get a big gain. You're not going to get 5 yards like most other catching running backs. You saw what Brady did with Vereen when he was in New England. He turned him from an average running back into a top running back. So I think that'll be even better for Matt Forte.
Moving on to our next player, this guy's a big one. We have offensive lineman Russell Okung. He is hitting the free agency market this year. Where might he go?
Well, if he stays with the Seahawks, then he'll get some big money, but he definitely deserves big money. If he does not stay there, any team that needs an offensive line, the Eagles could use some offensive line, the Chiefs could use offensive line, the Niners, any team that really needs an offensive line, he'll be huge for them.
He is a great player. I think that he definitely is capable of pulling blocks. He's a great blocker. He definitely is not going to be your guy that's going to be the one responsible for giving up sacks. So I think he could pull a big contract somewhere in the league. I don't know where that's going to be. I'd look places that are going to need an offensive line. In my opinion, I think that Tennessee could take him. I think that they are struggling on the offensive line unit. He could pull a big contract there. I think that they might be able to utilize him better than other teams might be able to. Also, Eric Weddle with the Chargers. He, for the first time in a long time, is going to be seeing other teams potentially. I don't think that he necessarily wants to return to San Diego because of whatever is happening there with the moving or whatever. So if I were him, I would want to move. And for me, I'd like to know, where do you guys think he's going to go?
I think he's going to go to the Giants. They need some defense. They were one of the last teams in the league in defensive yards allowed, defensive touchdowns last year. So Weddle could be a perfect player for that defense.
What do you think? I mean, I think he can really go anywhere. He's a great defensive player. I think it's just going to be sad to not see him in a Chargers uniform. But you saw at the end of the year they had some problems, the organization with Weddle. So it'll be sad, but he can go. He has a lot of places he can get.
So these next two players, in my opinion, kind of work in unison. And here's why. We have Sam Bradford and Brock Osweiler. And I think that these two guys are a little bit related, even though you might not think they are. You want to explain why?
Well, Sam Bradford right now, he'd probably stay with the Eagles, but if he does not stay with the Eagles would be in need of a quarterback. Who would that be? Probably Brock Osweiler. Brock Osweiler, you saw, was a great player with the Broncos, but the problem with that, the problem that he would not stay there is Peyton Manning. Is he going to retire? Will he not retire? We don't know. So if he takes his time on deciding, Brock will be out.
I think that Peyton Manning is really the huge decision factor in this process. I think that if Brock actually announces that he is going to be leaving, and or Peyton Manning announces that he will be staying, which I think would be a mistake, but if he does, I think that opens up Brock Osweiler to the NFL, especially the teams like the Rams, the Eagles, the Titans. Not necessarily the Titans, they do have Mariota, but you never know. Potentially even the 49ers, they could be looking for a better quarterback, and I think that they could find that in Brock Osweiler, even though they have Kaepernick.
And there's also RG3 in the mix, because he's definitely not going to stay with the Redskins. The Redskins will probably lock it up with Kirk Cousins. But if they don't, they might go for Brock, and then we'll have RG3 on the market, who the LA Rams were thinking about taking if they don't get Brock Osweiler. So there are a lot of quarterbacks on the market. They're not great quarterbacks, but they are quarterbacks that can lead a franchise.
Now, there are some players like RG3 who we aren't so sure, maybe not, they will or will not find a home. We are quite sure that RG3 probably will, as there are teams who have already expressed some interest in having him on their team, as he does express a little bit of a read option type of threat, as he is a fast guy. But there are three others in this game that we don't know if they're going to find another home because of some issues off the field. First of all, Johnny Manziel. We've all heard about you, bro. You've had issues around the league. You've had issues everywhere. You're in jail sometimes, parties, beating people up. This has got to stop. You going to find another team? What do you think?
Oh, there's no way. Who would want a player who's currently hungover in practice, doesn't perform well when he gets the chance, and doesn't care about the sport? No one. When you can get someone who actually does care, why would someone spend money on someone like that?
Well, I mean, in our last episode, we talked about the NBA trade deadline with Dwight Howard and players like of that nature that you do not want on your team, and this is one of them. Johnny Manziel, yes, he's a talent. At least he was a talent in college, but you do not need that kind of player on your team causing a mess. And there's also Greg Hardy, who we were looking at, who also would just cause a problem with all the fights, and Aldon Smith, who's a huge criminal, great player, but huge criminal. So I don't know if any of them will really find a team.
That's my problem for all three of these guys. I think that all of these guys have issues with the law, which in my opinion, and shouldn't be really for anybody, is not appealing to any team that's going to be paying you more than $5. And I think that all these guys are going to find themselves a home, and in my opinion, it's not in the NFL, it's in jail. So that actually does wrap up this week's episode. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. We will see you next week.